Jack Harrow leaned back against the grease-slicked engine block, wiping the sweat from his brow with a worn rag. The colony's twin moons hung lazily in the sky above, casting a pale light over the hardscrabble town below. The air smelled of oil and dust. It had been days since his last drink, but the quiet unease in his gut gnawed at him like a bad hangover. Then came the sound. A low hum at first, barely perceptible against the backdrop of a dying colony, but it grew louder. The ground vibrated beneath Jack's boots, a deep thrum that rattled the bones in his legs. He looked up, squinting into the horizon. At first, he thought it was some kind of transport ship, a salvage haul from one of the distant mining moons. But no, it was too large, too sudden, too violent. The roar of an engine tore through the air like a beast waking from a long slumber. The ground shook harder now, and a massive shadow spread across the sky, blotting out the stars. It was too big, too alien. Jack instinctively ducked behind the nearest engine part, his pulse spiking. He'd seen ships like this before, on the battlefield, in the far reaches of space, descending with no warning but a tide of death in their wake. The ship's silhouette appeared, impossibly large, a jagged black shape breaking through the clouds. It wasn't human, nothing about it was. The craft glowed with a strange energy, the blue-white light of its engines casting erratic shadows on the barren landscape. Then the ramp descended, and the ground trembled under the weight of what came next. Out of the ship's belly, figures began to emerge, tall, cloaked beings with obsidian armor, their movements deliberate, calculated, as if they were walking through a war zone rather than a dying colony. A low, guttural chant echoed in the cold air as they approached. Jack's gut churned. He knew this wasn't a peaceful visit. He'd seen enough combat to recognize an invasion when it walked through the door. He turned and ran, his boots kicking up dirt, but before he could take cover, one of the armored figures raised a hand, and an invisible force slammed into his chest. His body flew backward, crashing into the ground with a sickening thud. He struggled to breathe, his ribs aching as the air was forced from his lungs. The alien loomed over him, a figure encased in dark, shimmering armor, a face hidden behind a smooth, reflective visor. From beneath its helmet, a voice like cracked stone echoed in the cold air. "You are Jack Harrow," the voice intoned, cold and unfeeling. Jack coughed, struggling to rise. "Who the hell are you? What do you want with me?" "We come with a prophecy, one that cannot be ignored. You are the Sovereign, the one who will lead us." Jack's blood ran cold. "Sovereign?" His voice cracked with disbelief. He shook his head. "You've got the wrong guy. I'm nobody, just a mechanic." The figure's hand extended, and Jack felt his body jerk as if strings were pulling him against his will. He gasped, his heart racing. "We do not choose who becomes sovereign," the alien replied, its tone final. "The stars have already spoken. You will lead." Jack struggled against the invisible force, but it was no use. His mind raced. This couldn't be happening. Not to him. Not after everything. He was done with wars, with power, with all of it. Before he could protest further, the sound of an explosion rattled the ground, followed by the unmistakable cry of his fellow colonists in terror. The first wave of invaders had arrived. The Seraphim had not come alone. Cliffhanger, a second alien ship, far larger and more menacing than the first, blotted out the sky. Its descent was slow but inevitable. The Seraphim were not here for a prophecy. They were here to burn everything down to make room for their new sovereign. Jack's mind raced as he realized the terrible truth. Refusing them might be the first of many mistakes to come. The Seraphim vessel hummed with an eerie quiet as it drifted through the void, its smooth, obsidian hull reflecting the light of distant stars. Jack Harrow sat in what passed for a holding cell, an open chamber surrounded by faintly glowing walls of energy. It wasn't locked, but there was no mistaking the intent. He wasn't a prisoner, he was cargo. The silence gnawed at him. He'd been here for hours, days maybe. Time was slippery in space. Jack paced the chamber like a caged animal, glancing every so often at the alien guards flanking the entrance, hulking figures with armor that pulsed faintly as though it were alive. Their helmets hid their faces, their stillness unnerving. Jack ran a hand through his unkempt hair, muttering under his breath, "Lead an empire? Not a damn chance. These people are out of their minds." Before his thoughts could spiral further, the energy wall dimmed. A tall figure entered the room, a seraphim but different. She wore lighter armor, silver-trimmed and adorned with swirling, otherworldly patterns. Her face was uncovered, revealing pale, slate-gray skin and sharp, angular features. Her eyes glowed faintly blue as they fixed on him with a mix of pity and authority. "I am High Minister Velara," she said, her voice calm but firm, as though addressing a feral animal. "You have been summoned." Jack didn't move. "Summoned? No, you dragged me here against my will. So, unless you plan to dump me at the nearest rock, we've got nothing to talk about." Velara tilted her head, a faint smirk curling at the corner of her lips. "You humans, so defiant. It is why the stars chose you." "Stars don't choose anything," Jack shot back. "People do, and I didn't sign up for this." Velara stepped closer, the faint hum of her armor matching her deliberate strides. "The Seraphim Empire is dying sovereign. Civil war, rebellion, and the Varic Concord pressing at our borders. If the prophecy does not come to pass, we will fall. Millions will perish." Jack's fists clenched. "Find another savior. I'm no sovereign." Velara regarded him for a long moment, then stepped aside as two guards entered. Before Jack could react, they grabbed him, one on each arm. He cursed and struggled, but they were impossibly strong. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" "You refuse to listen," Velara replied, her calm voice cutting through his shouts. "Then you will understand the truth another way." They dragged him through the ship's endless halls, impossibly high ceilings and walls etched with glowing runes. Finally, they entered a massive chamber. In its center floated a colossal, rotating construct, a star map glowing with a million pinpricks of light. Jack's eyes widened. Earth, tiny and isolated, glowed crimson in a corner of the map. Around it, hundreds of alien empires spread like a dark tide. But at the center of the galaxy, the Seraphim Empire flickered weakly. Velara gestured toward it. "This is the galaxy as it stands. You humans live on its fringes, unaware of the chaos beyond. But make no mistake, the storm is coming for you too." Jack's gaze lingered on Earth, home, vulnerable. Velara continued, "The mark of the crown will bind you to our systems, connecting your mind to the Seraphim Empire's networks. You will understand the stakes. You will feel the weight of the galaxy." Jack's stomach dropped. "The what?" Before he could react, one of the guards pressed something cold against the back of his neck. There was a sharp, blinding pain, like a needle of ice sinking into his spine. Jack roared, falling to his knees as energy crackled through his body. The star map flared brighter, and for a split second, Jack saw it all: planets burning, fleets in battle, a galaxy on the brink of collapse. His mind screamed under the weight of it all. Then it stopped. Jack slumped forward, panting. "Congratulations," Velara said quietly. "You are now sovereign." Jack stumbled to his feet, fury burning in his chest. "You've just made the biggest mistake of your lives." Velara met his glare with cold certainty. "We'll see. For now, sovereign your empire awaits." Cliffhanger. The chamber doors slid open to reveal an enormous, sprawling Seraphim city, hovering spires, glowing highways, and ships darkening the sky. A massive crowd knelt in unison, chanting Jack's name. The weight of the galaxy had just fallen on one reluctant human. Jack Harrow stood at the edge of the platform, looking out over the sprawling city that stretched to the horizon. Towers of alien metal curved toward the sky like skeletal fingers, their surfaces glowing with strange runes. Thousands of Seraphim citizens knelt in the plaza below, their voices rising in a synchronized chant of his name. Sovereign, sovereign. He wasn't sure whether he wanted to laugh or throw up. "You've got to be kidding me," Jack muttered under his breath. Velura appeared beside him, her tone formal but edged with something sharp. "The people see you as their salvation. A human sovereign. Unorthodox, yes. But hope is often born of the unexpected." Jack shot her a glare. "You people kidnapped me, stuck a crown in my spine, and now you're telling me I'm a messiah? This is insane." She gave him a measured look. "Insane or not, it is your reality now. I suggest you adapt." Before Jack could respond, the soft hum of energy fields parted as a delegation approached. Seraphim nobles, each dressed in robes of flowing black and silver, stalked forward like vultures. At their head was a towering figure, Lord Tirak, a noble of one of the ruling houses. His armor was darker than the void, its jagged edges a statement of power. Tirak's voice boomed as he halted before Jack. "So this is the human," his tone dripped with disdain. Jack forced a grin. "Nice to meet you too, pal." Tirak's sharp eyes narrowed. "A savage from the edge of the galaxy wearing the crown of our people. An insult to everything the Seraphim Empire stands for." He looked to Velura. "This farce cannot stand." Jack snorted, folding his arms. "Funny, I agree, but here we are." Velura stepped forward, cutting off the tension. "The sovereign has been chosen. The prophecy is clear." Tirak's lip curled. "The prophecy has always been misinterpreted by fools like you. And now you hand our empire to an outsider, a human?" His gaze swept over the crowd below. "There are many who will not kneel to this impostor." Jack felt his temper flare. "I don't want your throne. I don't want your war. You can have it back, and I'll be on my way." Velura ignored him. "The decision is not yours to make, Lord Tirak. The sovereign will lead." Tirak's eyes burned into Jack's. "Then we shall see if he survives long enough." Jack didn't need to be a politician to hear the threat. The nobles turned and stalked off, their departure leaving a trail of tension thick enough to choke on. Jack rounded on Velura the moment they were gone. "What the hell is that? You've got nobles lining up to stab me in the back." Velura's expression remained calm, though a flicker of weariness showed in her eyes. "The ruling houses fight for power while the empire crumbles. Your arrival upsets the balance they cling to. Some will see you as salvation. Others will see you as a threat to be eliminated." Jack ran a hand down his face, the weight on his shoulders growing heavier by the second. "So what? You expect me to play king? To dodge assassins and smile for the crowd while this empire burns?" Velura regarded him for a long moment. "What I expect, sovereign, is for you to survive." Before Jack could respond, the chamber lights flickered. A low, mournful horn sounded through the air, vibrating the floor beneath them. Velura's face tightened. "What now?" Jack asked. She turned sharply. "An attack." Cliffhanger. Outside the window, the sky darkened as alien ships broke through the atmosphere, firing bolts of energy toward the city's outskirts. Explosions bloomed like deadly flowers, and the plaza erupted in chaos as citizens fled. Velura turned to Jack, her voice steely. "It seems your reign begins with war, sovereign." The Seraphim city trembled as the first wave of attacks struck. Jack stumbled, grabbing onto the railing as a distant explosion shook the ground. Outside, the sky was ablaze. Streaks of violet energy rained down from the heavens, erupting into fiery blooms on the city's outskirts. Seraphim ships scrambled to intercept, their sleek silhouettes rising like a swarm of hornets. "What the hell is happening?" Jack demanded, his voice drowned by distant screams and sirens. Velura was already moving, her armor glowing faintly as she activated a translucent screen in front of her. Lines of alien script raced across it as she barked orders into the void. "The Varic Concord. They've broken through the outer defenses. This is a full-scale assault." Jack's heart pounded as he turned to the window. In the distance, Towering spires crumbled under the force of the enemy bombardment. Ships, larger than he'd ever seen, blotted out the horizon as they descended. He clenched his fists. "I thought you said these guys were outside your borders." "They were." Valera's voice was tight with anger. "The house's infighting has weakened our defenses. They seized the opportunity." Jack's mind reeled. Yesterday, he was a mechanic on a dying colony, worrying about nothing bigger than a broken engine and his next meal. Now, he was standing on an alien city ship under siege, being told he was the so-called sovereign of a crumbling empire. And people were dying. "Get me off this damned ship," Jack said suddenly, his voice cold. Valera's head snapped toward him. "What?" Jack turned to face her, anger boiling under the surface. "I didn't sign up for this, but I'm not going to stand here while your people get blown to pieces. Get me to the ground. I can help." Valera stared at him as if he'd lost his mind. "You? A single human against an invasion fleet? This isn't some backwater skirmish. It's war." "I've seen war," Jack shot back, his voice hard, "and I know how to fight. Either you put me on the ground, or I'll find a way myself." Valera's eyes narrowed, searching him for hesitation and finding none. "Foolish," she muttered under her breath, but she turned to one of the Seraphim guards and issued a sharp command. Minutes later, Jack was strapped into an alien drop pod, his knuckles white as he gripped the restraints. The chamber shuddered, and a countdown began in a language he didn't understand. Valera's voice echoed over the comm. "You asked for this, Sovereign. Don't die. The Empire can't afford it." Jack smirked bitterly. "Can't promise anything." The pod launched. Jack's stomach lurched as he plummeted toward the burning city below. Outside the viewport, streaks of energy flashed past like angry meteors. Ships dueled in the skies, and the once glorious city was now a battlefield. The pod screamed toward the ground, the heat from the descent building until flames licked at the hull. Then, with a bone-jarring crash, Jack's pod smashed into the city square, sending debris and dust flying in every direction. The door hissed open, and Jack stumbled out, coughing. The square was chaos. Civilians fled in all directions, alien soldiers fought desperately against armored invaders, and the air was thick with smoke and blood. In the center of it all, Jack spotted them, the Varric, the invaders he'd heard about. They were monstrous. 9 feet tall, armored in segmented black plating, their glowing crimson eyes visible even through the haze. One of them turned, its gaze locking onto Jack. It snarled, a deep, bone-chilling sound. The creature raised an enormous energy blade and charged. Jack's instincts kicked in. He dived to the side, narrowly missing the blade as it carved through the stone where he'd stood. Rolling onto one knee, Jack grabbed the first weapon he could find, a discarded Seraphim energy rifle. He didn't understand how it worked, but he didn't need to. He aimed, he fired. A blinding bolt of energy shot from the rifle, slamming into the Varric's chest. The alien staggered back but kept coming. "Of course it's not that easy," Jack growled, bracing for the next attack. Cliffhanger. As the Varric bore down on him, an explosion rocked the square. A squad of Seraphim soldiers landed behind Jack, their weapons blazing. A female officer strode forward, her helmet retracting to reveal a scared face. "Not bad, Sovereign," she said, grinning. "Welcome to the war." Smoke coiled through the air, thick and acrid. The ground trembled under Jack's boots as explosions erupted nearby, sending shrapnel and dust flying. He coughed, squinting through the haze as the Seraphim officer barked orders to her squad. "Advance, hold the square, don't let them breach the central core." Jack took a moment to process what had just happened. He'd fired on an alien juggernaut, nearly died, and now he was surrounded by Seraphim soldiers as war raged around him. The officer, scared, hard-eyed, and clearly a veteran, glanced at him with curiosity as she reloaded her weapon. "Didn't expect you to fight, Sovereign," she said. Jack shook his head, clutching the alien energy rifle. Yeah, well, I'm full of surprises. She grinned faintly, despite the chaos. I'm Commander Kira. Try to stay alive. I'd hate to explain your death to High Minister Velara. Get me through this, and we'll call it even, Jack shot back. Before she could respond, a thunderous roar split the air. Across the square, more Varric soldiers poured through a breach in the city's defenses, their crimson eyes glowing like embers. They moved with terrifying speed, energy blades humming as they cleaved through Seraphin soldiers. Hold the line, Kira shouted. Archers to the rooftops, ground units with me. Jack followed her, adrenaline roaring through his veins. This wasn't like the battles he'd fought back home. This was something far worse. Alien war machines strode through the streets, their massive limbs crushing debris and bodies alike. Varric fighters swarmed like locusts, overwhelming the defenders with sheer ferocity. Jack dove for cover behind a broken statue as a Varric soldier charged. Kira's team opened fire, beams of blue energy lancing through the air and striking the alien's armor. It faltered, falling to one knee. Jack didn't hesitate. He darted forward, grabbed a fallen energy grenade from a Seraphin soldier's belt, and hurled it at the creature. The explosion lit up the square, throwing Jack back as the Varric's armored form was consumed by fire. He hit the ground hard, his ears ringing, but the adrenaline pushed him to his feet. Kira looked at him, impressed. You fight like a soldier. Jack shook his head, gasping for breath. I used to be, long time ago. There was no time for explanations. More Varric war cries echoed through the streets, and Kira's squad braced for the next wave. But then, something shifted. From the rooftops came a rising hum, deep and rhythmic, like a pulse. Jack looked up, shielding his eyes as new ships descended from the sky. Smaller and sleeker than the Varric vessels, they cut through the smoke like knives. Blue energy bolts rained down, striking Varric forces with deadly precision. The Seraphin soldiers erupted in cheers, reinforcements. Jack frowned. Who are they? Kira's expression darkened. Not allies. The houses are here. Out of the descending ships, serpentine banners unfurled, symbols of rival noble houses within the Seraphin Empire. They had come not to save the city, but to seize the opportunity. Cliffhanger. Jack turned to Kira, realization dawning on him. They're fighting for the throne. She nodded grimly, gripping her weapon, and we're caught in the middle. The sky above the square was alive with chaos. The Varric soldiers, relentless and monstrous, fought with savage precision, but the tide of battle had shifted. Seraphin reinforcements, though outnumbered, had arrived, and their ships now swarmed above the city like a deadly swarm of insects. Still, Jack knew this wasn't just a battle. It was the beginning of something far darker. As the bannered ships of the rival Seraphin houses descended into the square, Jack's stomach twisted. Each new arrival was a reminder of the fractured empire he'd been unwillingly thrust into. The air crackled with tension. The war wasn't just with the Varric anymore. It was about control, about who would sit on the throne. We need to move, Kira said, her voice low but urgent as she surveyed the battlefield. The house reinforcements are here to take the city, not to help us. They'll make their play soon. We need to get to the command center. Jack nodded, his eyes scanning the destruction. The ground was littered with bodies, Seraphin and Varric alike. Smoke billowed from the towering spires as the city's defense grid sputtered in the distance, flickering like a dying heartbeat. We don't have time, Jack said, his voice tight with frustration. I don't care about their politics. I care about stopping the damn war. Kira's hard gaze softened just a fraction. You don't understand, Sovereign. You're the key to all of it now. The houses think they can control you, but they're wrong. You don't even know how deeply they'll try to manipulate you or how much power you hold. Jack's brow furrowed. What are you talking about? Kira pulled him to the side as another explosion rocked the ground, sending ripples through the air. The mark of the crown, she said, her voice low. isn't just some fancy power boost. It links you to the entire Seraphim network, every system, every piece of military tech, every weapon. You can shut down their fleets. You can control their forces. Jack's eyes widened. You're saying I'm their puppet, and I don't even know it. Kira nodded grimly. Not just a puppet, a weapon. If the houses gain full control of you, they'll rule with an iron fist. But you could end it all. You could change the galaxy. Jack recoiled, as if struck. I didn't ask for this. I didn't ask for any of it. Kira's gaze was unyielding. It doesn't matter. You're in this now, whether you like it or not. The moment they put the mark on you, they sealed your fate. Jack's thoughts raced. His mind flashed back to the moment he felt the cold sting of the mark, the overwhelming flood of foreign information. He hadn't understood it at the time. How could he have? He'd been dragged into this cosmic mess without choice, without warning. But now, with Kira's words, everything started to make a sickening kind of sense. A booming voice echoed from above. Sovereign, surrender yourself to the rightful rulers of the Empire, or we will bring ruin upon this city. Jack looked up. The leader of the house forces was standing on the ramparts of one of their sleek, heavily armed ships. A tall, regal Seraphim woman with silver hair and eyes like molten gold, Lady Marveth, the High Commander of House Ethelis, the most powerful house in the Empire. Kira cursed under her breath. Lady Marveth, she's always had her eye on the throne. If you surrender to her now, it's over. She'll strip you of your authority and use you like a puppet. Jack's gut churned as Lady Marveth's eyes locked with his. He could feel the pressure of her gaze, like an invisible weight bearing down on him. It was the look of someone who knew they would win. Jack's hand gripped his energy rifle tighter. I'm not giving in. Kira nodded, the corner of her mouth curling into a fierce smile. Good, but we need to act fast. The city's defenses are failing, and if we don't take the central core soon, we're all dead. Cliffhanger. Just as they began to move, a piercing alarm sounded through the square, a sharp, shrill warning. The ground beneath them trembled again. From the horizon, a massive fleet of Varric warships appeared, blocking out the sun. They were closing in fast, and this time, it wasn't just a strike force. It was the entire Varric armada. Kira's face drained of color. We're out of time. The war just became a fight for survival. The ground shook again, a deep, ominous tremor that reverberated through the very bones of the city. Jack's instincts screamed at him to run, but his feet felt rooted to the spot as he watched the Varric warships descend. The sky darkened, their massive forms blotting out the sun, casting a shadow over the battlefield below. It was an armada, unlike anything he had ever seen, and it was bearing down on them. The Seraphim forces were in disarray. The rival houses were no longer fighting just the Varric. They were fighting each other, each one seeking to gain an upper hand in the chaos. The city's defenders had nowhere to retreat. The once proud spires now stood as tombs for the fallen, their lights flickering like dying stars. Kira's voice broke through the fog of Jack's thoughts. We have seconds, Sovereign. If you don't act now, we're done for. Jack's mind raced. He could feel it now, the mark inside him, a constant hum of alien knowledge. It felt like a living thing, a dark presence that whispered of power and control. The Seraphim systems, the weapons, the fleets, everything was at his fingertips, but the price was unimaginable. To use it was to bind himself to the very forces he'd been running from, to become a pawn, not just of the houses, but of the galaxy itself. But if he didn't use it— Damn it, Jack muttered, shaking his head. How the hell am I supposed to fight this? Kira didn't hesitate. You don't have a choice anymore. The Varric won't stop until they crush everything. The houses will use you for their own gain, but at least you can control the tide. Jack looked at her, eyes hard. And what happens to me? What happens to anyone else once I'm in control of this mess? Kira's lips curled into a grim smile. It's not about what happens to you. It's about survival. The people need a leader, and that leader is you, whether you like it or not. The houses will take everything from you, but you can take something back. Control the systems, Jack. You'll win this war. Jack's gaze shifted to the distant Varric Armada. He could feel the weight of the decision settling over him like a storm cloud. Every part of him screamed to reject it, to walk away. He wasn't a king. He wasn't a ruler. But as he watched the city burn and the blood of the innocent stain the streets, he knew there was no running from this. "All right," he said, his voice low but resolute. "I'll do it, but I'm doing it on my terms. Not for them, for everyone else." Kira nodded, her eyes hardening with approval. "Good. I'll get you to the central core." They made their way through the wreckage, dodging gunfire and the explosions that rocked the streets. Jack's mind whirled as they navigated the ruins of the city. He had no idea what to expect when he activated the full power of the mark, but the gravity of the decision weighed on him. The lives of millions rested on his shoulders. The Seraphim Empire, the Varric invaders, the rival houses, all of them were connected to this moment. As they approached the command center, the Seraphim defense grid flickered to life, momentarily repelling the Varric ships in the sky. But it was clear that the reprieve would be short-lived. The Varric were relentless, and even if they held off the initial wave, the city was doomed unless Jack made his move. Kira stopped in front of the reinforced door to the central core, her voice sharp. "Once you enter, there's no going back. This will bind you to the Seraphim Empire forever. Are you ready for that?" Jack swallowed hard. He didn't know what ready meant anymore. But he didn't have a choice. "I'll do whatever it takes." With a final nod, Kira slid the door open. Inside, the central core was a maze of glowing panels and alien technology, each one pulsing with energy. It was overwhelming, the sheer scale of what lay before him. The mark inside him flared to life, connecting with the systems around him in a wave of cold alien precision. The data flooded his mind, a torrent of calculations and codes too complex to fully understand. But the power was there, and it was his to command. His hands shook as he reached for the central console. He didn't know if he could control it, didn't know if he wanted to control it, but it was already too late. The moment his fingers touched the panel, the systems began to hum, the sound building to a deafening crescendo. "Cliffhanger. It's starting," Kira said, her voice grim. "You're in control now. Do it, Jack. End this." Jack's heart pounded in his chest as the full weight of the Seraphim Empire's power surged through him. The fleet in the sky, the weapons, the defenses, they were all his, but the question still burned in his mind. Would he be the hero, or would he become the monster? The hum of the systems vibrated through Jack's very bones as the power surged into him. It was more than just a tool, it was alive. The mark had unlocked something ancient within the Seraphim technology, a neural connection that linked his mind to the entire Empire's infrastructure. He could feel it now, the pulse of the fleet's engines, the sensors scanning the battlefield, the weapons primed for battle. His thoughts merged with the vastness of the Empire, overwhelming him like a tidal wave. "Sovereign, can you hear me?" Kira's voice broke through the chaos, her tone urgent. Jack's head swam with information, systems flooding his mind, overwhelming his senses. "Yeah," he managed to rasp, forcing his focus back to the here and now. "I hear you." "You've got control," she said, her voice tinged with awe. "You're the heart of this now. Don't hesitate. You'll need to strike fast before the Varric reassemble their forces." Jack's fingers trembled as they hovered over the console. The power to destroy was within his reach, and with it came a choice: to wipe out the Varric invaders, to obliterate the houses, or to seize control of everything. His mind spun. Was this really what it meant to rule, to have the lives of countless beings in his hands? The lines between savior and tyrant blurred with each passing second. The choice was clear, but it was also terrifying. "I'm not killing everyone," Jack muttered to himself, his voice shaking with uncertainty. "Not like this." He focused on the systems, pushing past the overwhelming flood of commands, seeking the one that could end the battle without destroying everything. His fingers danced across the glowing panel, inputting commands and rerouting energy through the defense grid. The Varric fleet was still advancing, but the Seraphim armada above was in disarray, its command fractured by the political infighting of the rival houses. The moment was fleeting. "Do it now," Kira urged. "The Varric are almost on top of us." With a grim nod, Jack issued the command. The mark responded, channeling its vast energy into the defense grid. There was a blinding flash of light, a deep, resonating pulse that rang through the air as the weapons platforms activated. The Varric ships in the sky jerked violently, as if struck by an unseen hand, before their systems flickered and shut down. One by one, the massive ships fell, their shields collapsing and their engines failing. They crashed to the ground in fiery wreckage, their alien occupants scrambling in desperation. The battlefield went silent. For a heartbeat, there was nothing but the distant rumble of the shattered city, and then the sounds of victory echoed. Shouts from the surviving Seraphim soldiers and the distant cheers from the civilian population. The invasion had been repelled. The Varric were broken. But Jack knew it wasn't over. Kira's voice came again, softer now. "You did it. The Varric are gone. You saved the city." But Jack didn't feel like a hero. He felt numb. He had destroyed an entire fleet with the press of a button. And yet it wasn't the power that haunted him. It was what he had become. The Empire's fate was now bound to him, whether he wanted it or not. He stepped away from the console, his legs unsteady as he tried to shake the weight of what he had done. His thoughts flashed to the faces of the people he'd seen in the streets, the civilians who had fought and died, the soldiers who had given their lives for something they didn't fully understand. Had he saved them, or had he simply condemned them to a new kind of tyranny? Kira approached him, her expression unreadable. "The houses won't accept this. They'll come for you. You've made your mark on the galaxy, Jack, and there's no turning back now." Jack turned to her, his face pale. "I didn't want this. I never asked for it." "No one does," Kira said, her voice low, almost sad. "But the world doesn't wait for you to decide. And now you're the sovereign. You can choose how it ends." Jack's mind raced. He could feel the weight of it all, the endless possibilities, the cost of power. He wasn't the mechanic who fixed engines anymore. He wasn't just a man. He was the leader of a fractured empire, the potential savior or destroyer of countless lives. The power was his, but at what cost? Cliffhanger. "You can choose how it ends," Kira repeated, stepping back. "But remember, there is no victory without sacrifice." Jack stood at the threshold of the command center, looking out at the burning city. The mark inside him thrummed, waiting. The fate of the Seraphim Empire, the rival houses, and the galaxy itself rested on his next move. The question was no longer whether he could save them. It was whether he could save himself.